their church. Any 5 or 10 or 20 of them, if that many, can split off and start another church, and by that they meet on a Sunday morning, make some noise, sound holy, and then we have a church. And it struck me that perhaps at the start of this semester, I know not all of you are students of theology, we should return to the very foundation, the very beginning of the idea of a sense of the sacred. So I want to read this chapter today. Tomorrow I want to read the 32nd chapter, which is when Jacob returns to the point at Bethel and has the encounter with the man who wrestled with him throughout the night. The man to whom he says, I will not let you go until you bless me. And then on Thursday, I want to explore with you the ideas around Exodus chapter 3, when Moses in the wilderness sees the burning bush, approaches it, and hears the word, take off your shoe from off your feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. We have inherited the idea of church, and we think of church as a sacred place. We have the Bible as a sacred book. But where we want to go in our reflection is, where is this idea of sacredness coming from? What was at its heart? And the passage that was read for you sets the foundation. This is a passage where for the first time in the Bible we encounter the idea of the Bahit Elohim, Bethel, the house of God. First time, and perhaps the only time, we are going to see it as a location. We're going to see it later on in the book of Amos as a name of a sanctuary, Bethel, the house of God. But here it is a spot, a location. And you notice that in this first reference to Bethel, the Bahit Elohim, the house of God, the oppositional phrase, the phrase which explains, it says the gateway to heaven. So in the earliest idea of the Old Testament writers about this notion of a sacred space, they had a sense that this space, wherever it was, whatever it was the place where heaven meets earth. There is a far more famous passage in the book of Isaiah, Isaiah chapter 6, regarded as Isaiah's call narrative, the story of how he was called to be a prophet. Remember, it starts off by saying, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up. And then it says, the train of his robe. Now, I hope you understand that language. You know, in Jamaica, women get married, oldest in the world. We have the world record for the average age at which women get married. In Guyana, it is 19. In Jamaica, it is 32 years and 5 months. We wait as long as we can. And however long we wait and however many children we have, we still have to wear a white frock, right? And usually it has to have a train behind it. So when the bride comes in, they have to wait a few minutes before you can walk behind her pillow or train. Right. So the idea in Isaiah is that God is sitting in heaven, and this curtain, the train of his robe, enters earth. And where does it enter? His train fills the temple. Now, before we read the Genesis, the idea of God that was around was a God far away, high and lifted up, far removed. The big word we use in theology is transcendent. There is a phrase, holy other, utterly different and removed from everything earthly or temporal or sinful. But in the concept of the sacred is the idea that this God of far away, transcended, holy other, utterly separate, connects. Somehow or the other, it is possible to reach into his presence, to touch, and to be touched by him, and to see God. That's where we are beginning now the idea that a space, a place, a location, an experience can be so utterly different, so special, so sacred. And this is where we now come to this book in Genesis. What is the story? The story is a pilgrimage. We are going to follow the story all the way to the nation of Israel. This is the beginning. And it begins with two brothers, one of whom, by reputation anyway, and then he says they challenge me to suggest that the statements which suggest that Jacob was deceptive were overread. If you follow the Hebrew text, it doesn't say that precisely, and I reminded him that I heard him make that comment several years ago. But the side of which I come down is that Jacob's own acceptance of his responsibility, which we will read tomorrow. He was the bad brother. He was the deceiver, the supplanter. And he now sets out on a journey, which journey is going to form the story of the origin of the nation of Israel, about which you are going to learn if you do not already know. So he's going from his house, run away from his brother whose birthright he has stolen, to go to live with his uncle, who also is going to Jinal, his uncle, and take away his boat, if you know the rest of the story. Where we meet him in chapter 28 is at the midpoint of that journey. The money, the food, the water he has taken from home has been exhausted, spent. And he lies down to sleep on this journey. And as Bob Marley said, rock stone was his pillow that night. He puts a stone under his head. And he has a dream. And the dream is of a ladder stretching up to heaven. And you know that's bad science. There is no ladder that can stretch from earth to heaven. Heaven is not up. Space is not up, it is out. And I confirmed this recently on my trip to Cape Canaveral in Florida, where I learned that when the rockets take off, they don't go up, they go out. There is no up where space is concerned. So when they leave to the moon, what they do is they go round and round the earth in wider and wider circles until they are outside of the range of Earth's gravity. And when they are going, they use power to get there, but when they are coming back, they simply fall, a free fall, and the Earth's gravity pull them. So they go up at 17,400 miles per hour and come down at 25,000 miles per hour, falling to the Earth. But there is no up, there is an out and a pull of gravity. And if they were at that are reaching to the heaven, then Jamaicans would climb it long time heaven and see for themselves with God. That's the mention, the gold. Streets of gold and streets of gold. If you finish with them. Anyway, forgive Jacob for his way of seeing the world. Unconscious mind resolved to see his. But at the top of the ladder is God. God identifies himself. So in discussing this idea of the sacred, I want to draw three things which are part of the notion of the sacred. The first is a location. And the location is not just spatial or physical. It is also historical. In this story, Jacob
comes to a spot, has a dream from that spot, make that spot the pivot of his life. So this is a spot from which and in relation to which he's going to determine the viability of his life. My grandmother lived in a place called Worcester in St. James, near to John's Hall, about 7 miles from Montego Bay. When I became an adult and got married and had children, I wanted to go back and look for my grandmother's house. She had long been dead and so on. And I took the children there only to discover that not only had she died genuinely, and not only had the house been taken down, but there was nothing to mark the spot. There's nothing to mark the spot. So it's almost like you feel like you are rootless because your parents began at your grandmother and used to go back there, and that was your starting point. And many of us,